this is an ideal place for people in Florida and around in from Europe who love the sun and the real heat of the summer. And we have air conditioning, of course, in the rooms, and we have TV, and we have all the amenities that have been added through the years. And so but the beach is just the same. And the clear water in the summer is unbelievable. We have a ledge which is out in front, and when you can see it in the clear weather and the water, and it's glassy calm, and boats go by, and it is, but the beach is practically empty. It's your place. And at night, when the lights are on, you walk home and you can, underneath the oak trees, you can look up and see the sky and the stars. But around you, surrounding you, is all the greenery and the oaks and the planting, which is natural to Florida. This is a treasure which many people have never seen. Bob and I were looking for a place to build, or buy in Florida a resort, which would be a complement to his father's business in Rhode Island, and which was the Weekapaug Inn, and on the shores of Block Island Sound. And that was a summer inn with no heat or anything in it. It was a wonderful place for the summer. But then when Bob finished working there in the fall, we decided that we better have something else to do in the winter to carry us through. So we started to look in Florida. And in the course of it, we were at a cocktail party, and someone said, "Oh, Bob," he said, "you're looking for some property?" He said, "Have you heard about that nudist camp down there south of Venice?" Bob's eyes lit up and his ears popped. He said, "No, I haven't heard about that." So they told us where it was, and so the very next day, the children, Buff and Rob, who were old enough to go to school, we set off and then left them in the day school and headed down to below Venice to Manasota Key, where the supposed nudist camp had been located. So eventually we came across a sign, and it said "for sale," and it said Manasota Beach Club. So we drove in, and what did we see? Well, we saw the most beautiful place in the world. Beautiful oak trees and all sorts of wonderful vegetation. We saw this sort of ramshackle building, but that's okay. And we walked up, and there was the Gulf of Mexico. And we were high. We were about 10, 12 feet above sea level. And we looked out at this gorgeous view. Nobody on the beach. And having come from Siesta Key and seen all the hordes of people on the beach, we thought, "Oh my heaven, this is a paradise." So we went back and looked at the inn and looked it over. It was a little wooden ramshackle 2-story building, and so the for sale sign said Key Realty. So we went down the Key and asked about the price, and we were met by Mr. Dignam Senior, and he had the property on sale, and he explained it was someone who lived in New York, and they were putting it on the market, and they had owned it as a fishing camp for a few years. So he said, "I'll call up Mr. Clairville. I'll call the stock market, New York stock market. I have his number." So we called up, and we found out, yes, it was a possibility that we might be able to buy it. So that was the beginning. We started working, but we found, of course, that there was no public water, as there is today. So we had a well, which was fine, but it pumped up sulfurish type water, so you had to have a watering system where aeration took away the smell. And that worked fine, and the pump we found out was a well. And of course we had a telephone, but no other telephones around. Electricity, yes, it came on in the line. And there were several cottages which we could start right out for the first year in. So we had those all painted and scrubbed and did a lot of work on them and what we could before the season opened. And lo and behold, a lot of the older guests from the Weekapaug Inn decided to come down, and some of the younger ones too. So we had first year, had a very nice year, and we also met some wonderful people who had been here before. And the landlords actually put their mother-in-law and the two mother-in-laws stayed here with our first guests. It was a great place to bring up children. The children loved it. They went off to school. From here, we took them to the bus, the school bus, and they went down to Englewood Elementary. And Jim was still too little, so he was in a playpen, but everything was really wonderful. We had hired a secretary because I wasn't very proficient in typing, but I could greet the guests and check the rooms and be sure that everything was in order. So it was a wonderful business to be in with your husband and the family. We all grew up together, and we added things like the tennis court and the swimming pool, and we eventually, the water came up the key, and Bob was one of the ones who encouraged people. They said, well, we don't need water, we have our well. He said, wells are well, not too good sometimes. Well, water doesn't come out. Water always comes up the key. So there were a lot of things that went along, and the road became paved, and people grumbled about that, but then it was much better than the others. And the friends that we've made over the years are incredible. It's a family resort, and that's what we always wanted it to be, just like the Weekapaug Inn, where people came back year after year and looked forward to seeing the same people and enjoying the same things. So we followed along in that vein, and so people came from Rhode Island, and from here in Florida they decided to try Weekapaug. So we had a very compatible business going back and forth. People who came here said, oh, they lived on the Key, can we play tennis here? And we had built a tennis court, and we said, of course, we'll start a club. So we started the Minnesota Beach Club, and all the people that were delighted because we served 3 meals a day. That meant they could make a reservation and come for dinner anytime they wanted, as long as we had room. And it developed that they became our great boosters, and their friends would come down and stay at the beach club, and they heard about it and so forth. So it just grew. It was Jim, who was the youngest one, who took over the inn Bob got to the retirement age, and so we had a young man come in, a hotel person, and he started helping out first. And then Jim said that he was interested, and the other fellow was great help, but he had other visions in his thing than his career, rather than such a small place as Minnesota Beach Club. So Jim took over, and then he had his first child down here, and Dee Dee, he was married to Dee Dee Buffum, and they were working at the inn and also in Charleston. But then as the baby came along, they thought they would come down here and work at the club, and that helped Dad. So that was great. And then they both decided that they would rather just run the inn up north, and that there was a lot to do in renovation and so forth up there because it was a much bigger enterprise. So he decided, and Dee Dee, and they moved up north and to the Weekapaug Inn, and Buffy took over down here for us, which was a blessing. So she's been doing this, and Jim was up there. So that's more or less brings us pretty much up to date.
My brothers and I, we were all in the back of the station wagon, came down this dusty dirt, sandy road, and came into this wonderful property. So that was in 1960, but the clubhouse really goes back longer than that.
Oh yeah,
probably
20s.
Yeah, in the early 20s, and we really have to research it and figure out when the original clubhouse was built. It was probably a home, a boarding house, maybe a fishing camp. one of the original cottages, we think, is called the Sandpiper now, but it was originally called the Bungalow, and that might have been a stable, right, Mom?
Yep. Yep.
So,
They had to have a way to get off the quay, so they had horses just to pull a wagon or a cart or something in order to get off the quay. We're about, what, a mile and a half down?
yeah, mile and a half from the North Bridge, and that time the North Bridge did not open because the northern part of Lemon Bay, you have Lemon Bay on one side, the Gulf of Mexico on the other, is Manasota Key, and the northern side didn't actually go all the way through. It wasn't until the 1960s, early 60s, that the Intercoastal Waterway was built, and that opened up the waterway right up to Venice.
It's a special day today,
It's our 1-year anniversary.
and the best place to spend that special day,
It's the same place where we had our wedding.
the Manasota Beach Club.
The natural vegetation, as you see in the scenery and the landscape, we kept natural in its natural state, so that the native habitat could be preserved and the native animals could also survive here. And it also provided a certain attraction to our guests because it's very peaceful. As you can hear, the water, the Gulf of Mexico, the beach. It was a wonderful retreat. And so if we went back in history, probably to the 40s, I think that's when it was a nudist colony, or more like a health camp.
Yeah, it really was a health camp. It was the time, and we all forget it now, but before penicillin and before the miracle drugs of today, and so people would come to Florida, bring their children if they were sickly, and they would survive down here without the winter cold and without the flu and things like that. So it was a place that people did come to get away from the bad climate up north.
As a health resort. But my dad always said he knew it wasn't a nudist colony anymore when they introduced the wicker furniture. He had quite a sense of humor. But anyway, so we came over the rickety bridge in our station wagon and fell in love with this property. It's just amazing. And there are gopher tortoises here that we don't know how old they are. Maybe 50, 60, maybe 75 years old. They're hopefully the same ones were here when in 1860. Of course, you can also go down on the beach, and we have fossils down there that you can find, fossil shark's teeth, and that's actually how people have picked the Manasota Beach Club, because they wanted to find some shark's teeth, and we had it mentioned in our literature. And they came, and you have to search for it yourself. You got to go down on the beach early in the morning or after a storm. Often you'll find shells, but we were famous for our shark's teeth and fossils. In our clubhouse, we do have a couple of nature tables where you can view different kinds of shells that you might find. They're all labeled, or different types of fossils. We have things that have been found on the beach over the 40, 50 years that we've been here. But camel's teeth, mastodon tusk, and horse's teeth.
Yep.
So shark and little shark's teeth and big shark's teeth. So it's a really fun thing to do while you're here. We've lived here as a family, and I had the great good fortune to grow up here. Had always an interest in education, biology, and on the environment. And this is a great opportunity to save and preserve and conserve a natural habitat of the west coast of Florida. And we have wonderful guests that come back, staff that come back year after year, and they're part of this wonderful concept and goal to help preserve this area, and also have a place where families can come and be together and just enjoy themselves and not have to worry about anything. And find a peaceful retreat. So we're working together to figure out how we can create a plan to make this place sustainable, and to make it here and available for all the people, all the guests and families and the future generations, and people and animals too, like the gopher tortoises are still want to help preserve those and the native habitat, and we can provide educational opportunities as well for our guests. So thanks, Mom. Got it started, and we're continuing on.